Hello, everyone. Can you hear us? Are we audible?
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Hi. Hi. Okay, I see the lights moving on the stream. I see the things happening. Oh, Ansh, I can hear some wind from where you are. Just a note. And yeah, okay, so you can hear us fine. All right, that's great. Hi, everyone. That only took about 10 minutes, which is fine. Again, if you are just joining us, you're watching IndiE3 2014. I'm here with Veerender Jubbal. I'm here with Robert Moore, and I'm here with Ansh. And we're going to talk about racism, games. So this is going to be one. I'm going to sit back, and I'm just going to let people talk it over, and I'll be back at the 55. And yeah, enjoy.
Hello, everybody. I'm Robert Moore, also known as Bloody Honey. All I do really is yell about racism in games, so like this is a good panel for me.
Hello everyone, I'm Ansh, also known as Light Narcissus. I'm a developer and an occasional writer. I'm fairly opinionated when it comes to politics and social justice. So yeah, I'm perfectly home here.
Vereen's here too.
Hello, Vereen, are you there?
Oh, you can't hear me?
Oh, okay, hello, oh, you're there. You're there.
Oh? Okay. My name is Veerender.
Oh, Vereen, you're coming in and out.
Yeah, you're coming in and out. Hold on, Vereen. I'll move you into the room and we'll make sure your mic is okay, because it seems like something is just going around. Robert, I'll let you talk with Ansh, and I'll see what's going on with Vereen's mic for a second.
Alrighty.
Yeah,
well,
give me a second.
Hello, nice to meet you. Good to
meet
nice
to meet you too, Robert.
So racism in video games.
Yeah, so where do you want to start?
Honestly, we're on the list. Like I said, my go-to example for this is always like
Bioshock Infinite.
Bioshock Infinite. Even if you look at E3 this year, not even just like overt racism, just not even intentional. Yeah. A lot of it comes down to just people not really having other insights on their dev teams.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. It's true. I mean, a lot of the problem right now is that the racism we see is not overt, but it's also the problem that with the attitude that they do not recognize that what they're doing is inherently a racial attitude.
Right. And additionally, with such like topics as representation, right now representation is kind of like a hard issue in the entire industry, just in every aspect, from race to gender to sexuality to what have you.
Yeah, true.
Like the go-to joke for the game industry right now is sad white man with a gun and stubble. And honestly, while it seems like all these people are made from a committee, as far as I can tell, it's mostly because on these teams there's just a lack of diversity to point out, hey, we're kind of going into a weird territory here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, not just the team composition, but also the hierarchical thing. Like, if you have like the most of the major positions in the dev team are occupied by white males. So you do not have the kind of understanding which you require when you apply some kind of diversity representation in your games.
And like our other examples are where there are, say, a person of color in the stance of being in the game. They're usually enemy characters. Like, off the top of my head, in the past 5 years, I can name maybe 4 games that portrayed like a black male. Yeah. Let's see.
Not just that. I mean, a lot of games do offer, like many say that we offer people of diverse races to have their own representations in their games, and those are generally the kind of games like the RPGs which offer customization, but then you are not really offering a unique diverse experience based on your race. It's just a simple color, and I think that's more offensive, because when you devolve or degenerate the entire aspect of race into a single slider, a color, a skin color, it's a lot more offensive in that sense. So that is not diversity at all, and it's just something which a lot of developers try to say when they just want to avoid the aspect of representation in games.
And additionally, even like when the developers explicitly go out to tackle race, like the Phantom hanging over the conversation, Bioshock Infinite, it
Yeah.
usually winds up like that entire game is an interesting example because they try to cover this time period was this racist time. This place is supposed to be full of monstrously racist people. They're not supposed to be likable. The first thing you do is they give you a baseball to throw at a mixed couple.
Yeah.
And then it's like about halfway through the game when you finally reach the point where you need the oppressed minority can rise up to fight against all this tyranny and whatnot. Suddenly they do a switch. Like, actually, surprise, everyone's bad.
Yeah.
And
And they don't do it in a really good way as well. They really show them like how the kind of oppression varies from race to race, and that's really as racist as you can get.
And additionally, like immediately after that, like previously in the game, there's the walk through the museum, which shows just racist characters. But like the very next thing you see after the Vox Populi turn on you is like a bunch of scalps hanging on a wall, and it's like no one really thought this was a good idea. Like this was a bad idea, and you look at the dev team, it's like, well, no one really could have just pointed that out because it was largely white males on the team.
Yeah, pretty much. And the problem with one of many Bioshock Infinite's problem is that it suffers from narrative distraction, because the developers do not really have an idea of where they wanted to go. They tried taking one kind of narrative initially, the kind where it's based on the era of where there was clear segregation, and then they try to just switch into a multidimensional universe, a multiverse universe, and they just drop that entire thing and try to wrap it up in a really poor manner.
Right.
And even the way in which they depict the kind of savage oppression of the Vox Populi is really poorly done. I mean, the sequence in which Daisy does the execution, it's really poorly done. I mean, it's the kind of question marks that are being raised not just on the character but also on the entire motive of why did they even bother to go with those things if they really intended to show that okay, everyone is bad when they get the power. It's not
even then they've done that plot before. I imagine that's there because it's a shot game. Every shot game has the sudden inevitable twist where you're betrayed, but they didn't really earn it. It just felt like all at once, actually everyone is kind of racist. You're all kind of the villains. It's like, no, you just built up the entire situation of where these people are oppressed. These people are servants. They're angry, and then all at once you're like, actually they're bad too, and then it's just unearned. And that's usually how race issues are treated in a lot of games. It turns out they try to focus on them, but they don't earn it. No. And then there's other games where it's just they include a large swath of things, but don't really do much about the race. So say Watch Dogs. Or no, even better example, David Cage. David Cage's games. If you look through David Cage's games, there will always be one person of color in the cast. They may not be prominent, but they'll be there. Being in the game, let's see, Fahrenheit. I can't ever remember its English title. The
Indigo Prophecy.
Indigo Prophecy, thank you. Yeah. Indigo Prophecy has you with this one guy who hears funky jazz music in his head every time he goes. He has a huge fro. He talks in like a weird imagined Harlem accent. Yeah. And then it's like this. I don't understand. This guy kind of hits every stereotype of like a 70s black cop. Yep. There's Heavy Rain, where the only person of color you run into is the man in the junkyard, who almost immediately tries to attack and kill you. It's like, I understand you may have thought you were including here, but you just kind of have these people falling in the stereotypes of funky comedic character or, say, villain.
Yeah. Yeah, true. And there are very few depictions of people of color who have a substantial amount of role to play in games who are able to evade those kind of stereotypes, because even generally, like you said before, most of these people of color end up being either the enemies or NPCs, and when they're NPCs, they generally tend to be the kind of stereotypically the characters which stereotype or their racial characteristics. So yeah, it's really unfortunate in that sense. It's not just the David Cage games. Even small examples spring up even in games like Deus Ex Human Revolution, which supposedly was made from a really diverse group of developers at IDOS Montreal, and but still it ends up having those having an NPC, a black lady who talks about the crime and how they try to evade cops. So it does really try to sum up all the stereotypical characters of that race.
Also, you're cutting in and out a bit, just to let you know. Hope I didn't just lose you. Oh, gotcha.
Hello, are you there? Ansh,
Yes.
are you there?
Hello.
Yeah.
Are you there?
Oh.
Because you were kind of cut off for a little bit there.
Oh, I did?
Just for a tiny bit. I think you should go back just a little bit. I was checking and something was a little weird.
You're good now. I can hear you now.
Yeah, you're good now.
Right.
There you go.
So what I was saying is that even in diverse developer teams, then there are aspects where these kind of stereotypical characters do slip in, because there's not a person at the top level in the studios who can question why have you put this person here. So everyone here, everyone at the bottom, they make the games, they make the characters which the people at the top create and write about, and that's the problem, because they still think that they're trying to gain this kind of diversity, for creating this kind of diversity for the audience. But the problem is that they do not have the awareness, or I would say the cultural literacy to for this kind of to implement this kind of diversity. And that's the problem, because they try to learn from people. They try to say, we are listening, we are trying to learn, but you really need to have people of different racial backgrounds and different economic backgrounds to really have those kind of experiences of characters implemented in your game.
And from there, it's even with just, I just lost my train of basically, I'm agreeing with what you're saying, and also that in general a little bit more needs to be done. So say on top of just hey, this isn't good, someone on staff to point that out to the higher ups who are in control of this script changes. In general, it's like character design starts at this. Everything starts at this, and like representation in video games turns out actually winds up just being a beautiful thing. So say like with The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead lead starts with black character. The Walking Dead 2, Clementine, black character. These probably the most diverse set of people of color I've seen in a lead role in a video game, because they're just hit a range of emotions. They're not just like, say, Grand Theft Auto. CJ, the guy from the newest game, they're at the start criminals. They are trying to rise up out of the criminal, but they still start at the criminal, though that might be still limited to their source material. But
Yeah.
meanwhile, The Walking Dead is just, we start with this guy who's a character, and we learn, like, Lee still falls into the, he did some crime, but he at least seems remorseful about it. There's a story behind it. It's not just, say, this guy's black, he has to, and he's a gangster. So it's like, things happen, things develop. I'm definitely put The Walking Dead to the top of my list as far as diversity and representation goes so far.
Yeah, definitely, because I think Walking Dead is a really good example of the age-old rule that just giving more time to a character does not mean he's more developed. Just like GTA 5 gives Franklin a lot of time in its story, but eventually he ends up being a really stereotypical character, just like the previous African American characters in GTA, like CJ. But The Walking Dead gives Lee a good amount of time as the main protagonist of the story, but also that time is well spent because the character has a decent amount of writing to back up in his background to back up his character. So you need a writing quality, you need good diverse writers in your writer's room to actually be able to implement multi-layered and diverse characters, because that's how good characters are made and good characters are written, when you have different sets of experiences in your writer's room.
And to bring it back to Franklin, even like it seems like they start. Aside from just feeling like that game was written by like a committee of people who didn't have the same notes, it feels like Franklin was one of those characters who he started naturally as the criminal, because that's just what you do in a great GTA game, despite him having to be the gang member of the group. But it felt like they were trying to take him away from that, and his story just somehow got lost in the story of the other two characters. Who, unfortunately,
it was never the main focus. I mean, it was the main focus initially, but I think eventually, as the game progressed, Michael and Trevor's story became more and more important. And again, the aspect of Franklin trying to escape from the life of crime is also fairly stereotypical of many black characters in movies and games before.
Right. Just for some reason.
Hello.
Life of crime. It's
yeah.
I thought I was. Did you lose me?
You did for a second there.
Just for a second.
But
Are you there?
Testing. Hello.
Yep.
Hi.
I hear you.
Whew. Like the reform of the person of color is my least favorite stereotype, because it always starts as the idea of start from the bottom and then move to the top is a great idea, sure, but can I like start at the bottom and not have to have killed or robbed people or whatever? Can I just be some random guy who just happens to have a different skin tone than our standard protagonist?
Yeah.
Or like in the case of say Prototype 2. Prototype 2 stars a black main character. He is a former Marine, I believe he was, but he basically spends most of the game being this hardcore angry man the entire game. I need no development. Nothing really comes out of him aside from just like the one scene where he walks into a room, hits a computer. I fucking hate computers. It's like, But like every time I see a main character, a person of color, I basically go in at this point slightly worried, because I'm thinking, oh no, how are they going to screw this up? And then it's a shame that that's the preordained thoughts at this point. I actually kind of wish Veerender were here so I could go into Far Cry 4 because of all of what he got over that, but... Oh no, I think we actually lost Veerender.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I took Veerender to the other room, and I think he restarted his computer because I think he was having issues. So he'll be back hopefully very soon, and I'll get to work with him.
Gotcha. I guess I'll touch on Far Cry 4 then a little bit, because the thing that just came out on it.
If you want as well, like I'm here listening, but I'm also really interested in saying some stuff as well. So if you need to listen, just
no, it's cool. I think
feel free to jump in if you need to.
Yeah, but, definitely.
With Far Cry 4, the first thing we saw was the antagonist, who at first glance that was kind of not a very good image, because it seemed like it was going to be another white savior story, but. The recent images come out seem to indicate he's both not a white man and also maybe related to the villain. Though I'm not sure if I'm projecting that. I might have read that wrong somewhere. But in general, it just seems like, all right, maybe they're learning from their mistakes, even though I don't really hold high hopes for Ubisoft these days after Watch Dogs and fresh off of Assassin's Creed. But
I mean, I don't know. I mean, he definitely. I'm not exactly sure about his ethnicity, but people have said that he could possibly be North Asian or Russian, possibly. So Russian is pretty much in the Caucasian racial group. So yeah. So besides that, I think the thing which offended me the most about the Far Cry 4, and that was not even the initial survivor tourism thing. Like the Far Cry has this thing about survivor tourism where they put a white man in a really exotic environment full of dangerous animals and dangerous local natives, and they try to bring out the so-called inner animal within that white man and show that he could also be the predator of the jungle, and he could kill people and do everything like that. So yeah, that survivor tourism aspect of Far Cry has always troubled me. I think slightly barring Far Cry 2, because Far Cry 2 did allow you to play of characters of different race. But for me, what offended me the most as more details came out is that Far Cry 4, despite taking place on in an area in between India and Nepal, it is not at all sensitive about the geopolitics of that entire region. They try to mix Hindi into that particular area. They try to show the auto rickshaws in those areas. It's like they have literally done zero research on that particular area. And even if they project it as a fictional area, it's pretty clear where the actual environment of that particular game has been inspired from.
Someone just brought up Dead Island in the chat, actually, and I wanted to talk about that for a moment, because that game, something like that entire game, I swear, was made by just a group of dudes in a room who's like, hey man, would it be cool if we just like did this? But like, every person of color you come across in that game is some kind of stereotype.
Yeah.
The main character you play is stand-in for just whatever the black rapper at the time was, and it's just, that game was exhausting, really exhausting. I can't even go into it. But conversely, like, say, like Japan's not at all exempt to this. Like, look at the entire cast of Street Fighter. Everyone in Street Fighter is basically a racial stereotype.
Yeah.
And it's like you can't really hold anyone not accountable for it, despite how much we love them. But
Yeah.
in general, just representation in video games it's become better since that point of everyone being a racial stereotype from their country of origin in Street Fighter to being these things are still happening, like but they're happening less overtly. And it becomes, even pointing it out becomes an immediate debate between the game community, because no one wants to be the one to point out, hello, this particular person might be acting a little racist. Like, just look at the the backlash that happens the minute you point this out. Look at Veerender, who just joined us, but it's not.
Speaking of Veerender, I'm gonna bring Veerender in. Actually, I'm gonna bring Veerender in right now because we worked out his mic and it's cool.
There you go.
Good timing.
Hello?
Welcome back. I just got done talking about you.
Can I do introductions then, if that's fine? Hello?
Yeah, we do introductions.
Okay.
Hello again. Oh, go ahead. You first.
My name is Veerender Jubbal, and I'm a writer and a critic, and I talk about race, representation, Sikhism, diversity, and how they relate to media, specifically video games. And it is an absolute honor to be here. Yep.
Hi, I'm Bloody Honey. I'm the only one who's probably not actually qualified to be speaking here. Like, I don't write. I don't lift. All I do is lift weights and think about making video games.
But we always love
We're
your
doing
opinions.
intros again?
Yes. I just love to tell people I'm not actually qualified in anything. I just observe these things.
Well, what's it called? Well, Robert, you're actually, because your name is Robert. Robert, you actually were talking about Far Cry 4 just now.
Yes.
So I'm interested in hearing that.
Also, someone is echoing.
Yeah, Veerender, we were just talking about Far Cry 4 and the kind of reaction that the people get when someone tries to point out racism. So
Yeah, the
yeah.
strange thing is, video games have had racism since the days of the NES, and even before that. Like, this isn't anything new. Video games have always been culturally insensitive to numerous groups, races, religions, and that's just specific. Like, we can say video games are sexist, and enough information, there's enough examples there with scantily clad women and armor being portrayed like this, box art being drawn like this, and for video games, there hasn't been many voices until as of recently to call out the cultural insensitivities of racism in video games. And with what I did with Far Cry 4, because that box art is insensitive, and it doesn't matter if both of them are people of color either way, because it's still insensitive to East religions, such as Buddhism or Hinduism.
Yeah.
And I wrote 2 tweets, and I got so much vitriol and hate for just 2 tweets.
Yeah, I think that inherent mindset of among the video game the gaming community is still that which was when it wasn't still a niche. Like, if anyone tries to point fingers at your beloved gaming community, you should try to just defend it at all costs without thinking or even for a single second whether you're in the wrong or not.
I think I'm picking up echo off of you, Veerender.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been noticing that as well. Are you bringing up the screen?
Yeah, I am, but I don't think I'm going to be able to fix this. I sincerely apologize.
Okay, that's fine. I'll try to see what I can do to lower it or something.
Hey, yeah, to bring it back to the topic of the game community's defense, like, I honestly believe video games can be art at some point. I believe that the entire community, the genre, can rise up like film and books. But the thing is, as long as we cannot point out these issues, there's going to be a ton of things blocking that. So it's like, people want games to be art, but also don't want you criticizing as if they were art.
Yeah, true. And like I was saying earlier to Robert, that that the aspect of how we recognize any kind of racist in tone to any game should also be refined, because none of those things are going to be really overt right now, other than some of the obvious cases like Bioshock Infinite, or in this case Far Cry 4, but also in general terms that how developers try to fake representation in games through...
Oh, we just lost Veerender again.
All right. Yeah, so I was saying, like, faking representation through customization and skin color tones is not really representing diversity in your games. Likewise, having like there's a really common point made in these kind of discussions where high fantasy games like Elder Scrolls is brought up, where species often based off actual real-world races are often depicted by certain stereotypical characteristics. Like, I think Elder Scrolls have these southern race. Yeah, the Red Guards. The Red Guards. Yeah, the Red Guards, and even some of the non-human races, I guess. The ones which
what were they? The cats. The Khajiit. For some reason, they all seem to.
Yeah, but I'll go along with Red Guards. Red Guards have this, I think, a starting advantage where they have a bonus on strength and a negative modifier on intelligence. So these kind of racial stereotyping also slips in through the fantasy veneer, and you really need to call out on those aspects as well. It's not just like when you see humans, racism could only exist then. Even when you see a fantasy character or a fantasy race or species, even then it could be racially problematic based on real-world analogies or parallels.
And to the point. He's back.
Yeah, I'm back with Reed. We switched to push the talk, so that'll work out better.
All right, I don't hear myself. Good.
Yep,
okay.
Yep, neither do I. Yep, that's good.
Completely lost my train of thought with Reed came back in.
Did you? I wasn't sure.
I don't want to embarrass myself in front of Reed.
Well, if you want, I can try noting something in particular. I do have some actual thoughts myself.
Sure.
Okay. All right.
Join on in.
Yeah. You should make sure when other people talk, you have the push to talk, let go, so then people won't hear the echo. Because I think you have the button on now. Yeah, there you go. That's perfect. So I mean, there are a few things. There are a few things that I want to note specifically, especially with things like Far Cry 4, exactly, which is that video games are they're like, because we talk about video games as people having agency, which is like an important idea. This idea that we have freedom in games, but what it seems is that we seem to have a white agency, which is the idea that video games are vessels towards white people to enact their own agency onto others. And Far Cry 4 is a really good example of that. Actually an important example of that, and I'm interested in this idea of agency and freedom, and I'm interested in this idea of well, who are video games made for? When we think of something like Watch Dogs, which I think is worthwhile, because I did an interview once where I said Watch Dogs is one of the most like anti-black games in recent history. It probably is if you heard stuff about it. But I mean, it's this thing where when I'm interested in possibly you can inform me about this. It's just, you know, when it comes to these games are just vessels for a very particular type of group. And when you think of, I've heard statistics about how most of the victims in Watch Dogs usually are women and people of color, even though at the same time Watch Dogs positions you as some kind of rebel of society, but you're not, right? So there's this weird question of whose fantasy is this supposed to be? Whose fantasy are video games supposed to be fulfilling here? And I think that's something we're talking about.
I still haven't actually played Watch Dogs, so I feel like I really can't. I've somehow been avoiding all details of it aside from things people throw at me.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't played either. I just heard a lot of terrible things about it for the most part. I mean things that are just kind of cringy.
I do remember seeing the screen cap of the I want to call him a Trayvon Martin stand-in. And
yeah. Someone pointed out that it could also.
And go.
Hello?
I think we
lost Veerender, are you there?
Is everyone here?
I think so.
I'm here.
I can't hear Veerender for a second. Big Veerender is okay, Veerender's gone. I'm gonna move Veerender back because
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, you're coming off. Okay.
Let's just go.
Okay, that's fine.
What were you saying about Watch Dogs?
Right.
I didn't get a chance to play it either.
It just seems like I can't confirm or deny this because once again I haven't played it, but it seems like a lot of the times when you pull the information for, say, a person of color, it'll always say something like, well, I'm not sure if it's randomly generated or not. Once again, haven't played it, but it seems like the tags for things like former parolee, drug dealer, so on and so forth, seem to be attached to people of color or women, whereas other people, when I've seen screenshots of, say, white people, they're bankers, they're telegraphers, they're usually ones you wind up pulling money from their accounts for. And once again, I don't know how it's attached, but it just seems real odd that happens to these marginalized people.
Video games can and are able to handle these topics. No, but it's very difficult when they don't take in the interests of color or of women as consultants.
I think they can actually handle these issues, but the thing is that to be able to handle those issues, you need to start deconstructing the traditional mindset of putting player in the position of power, and that's a key aspect because whichever genre of games we play right now, the player is always in a position of power, whether he has a gun in his hand or whether he is the king of a kingdom, has the resources at his disposal. He's always in a position of power. So to really start deconstructing that power into a kind of helplessness or powerlessness that goes beyond the traditional lack of ammo or something like that. I think that can be one of the key gateways to start designing games that are based on actual diversity and representation of different race and racial experiences and how they are being brought up, what it is like living them in day-to-day life. I think there are a few aspects. I don't really want to go on a self-promotion note here, but the game which I'm delving right now, it also includes a few elements of that, where it's often that the kind that if you play as people of a different color, then the reaction of the NPCs change, the kind of difficulty on certain times in certain sections of the game changes. So trying to generate this kind of different playable experience is, I think, one of the ways you can try to represent race in a more of a direct manner.
Right. If you're going to display something that is going to reflect racism, at least make it relevant to the game, so you can pass this experience over to the player who may not have experienced this.
Yeah, I think one of the most understated strengths of video gaming as a medium is that they can be really they can generate empathy, they can generate sympathy, and they can also generate a great amount of understanding in players, because when you're playing as someone, you're basically placed in their shoes. So if you're playing as a person of color, you are basically in their shoes. So you can actually experience the world if it's done properly. You can experience the world from their shoes, and you can experience how people react to them, and that could result, if the person is smart enough, or if he's willing to do that, obviously, then they can introspect on their own behavior with respect to any person of color. And that is the kind of, I would believe, a really positive outcome racial representation in games.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Video games are going to handle these issues of racism, then you have to hire people of color. You have to consult and listen to their experiences. Something like BioShock Infinite not do that well, and it heavily showed from what the team was. It was mainly white people. I don't even know. I didn't see any people of color on that team whatsoever. But a game like The Walking Dead is super important for having numerous represented. There's Hispanic characters, there's Asian characters, there's an Indian character, there's white characters, women represented well because they're all written as people, and you play as a black man protecting a little black girl, a young black girl, and that never happens for video games whatsoever.
Even more rare, the time you ever get to play a black woman as the main character, let alone a teenager one, I guess. How old is... I don't actually know how she is. But, yes.
Yeah.
You... Like, The Walking Dead is my go-to for this, what a diverse cast of characters looks like, because, like, they're nailing it right now. And it's somehow... They've managed to find a magic potion that keeps them from just turning this into some kind of offensive mess. Like, I had high hopes for Ubisoft way back when Assassin's Creed Liberation came out, because they seem to have covered the race aspect, the sex race access. So seeing what's going on with Assassin's Creed Unity is just extra disappointing, because it seems like they were on the right track at some point.
Yeah,
even with Black Flag, they had the former slave character. He wasn't a main character, and I was disappointed in that, but he at least would say and address issues that came up.
Yeah, even with the new one, what we're seeing is, I don't think there's specific confirmation yet, but you're playing as there's 4 white guys.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's so, like, no women, no people of color, and it's a huge issue, because things like this can cause internalized race and internalized misogyny for years for numerous people. I myself had internalized racism for years, because video games and media are always forcing upon that being a white man is like the pinnacle, and that goal, or not even that's the goal, that's the default, quote unquote, and there is no default. There is no default whatsoever. But so many games, heterosexual, cisgender, white man, and it gets boring, and it gets tiring, and there's so many stories and experiences that old.
Exactly. Like, a thing that's kept me from... As a child, I play video games. It's either, if they're not starring a cartoon character, it's a white guy with a gun. So this continues up to, like, high school, where I'm believing, well, if I'm going to make a video game, I guess it'll have to be one starring a white guy with a gun. So, not only do we wind up with this representation issue in the games, but it winds up reflecting on people who want to make games later, because they think if they want the magic keywords of the game won't sell unless this particular brand of main characters exist. But in general, it basically comes down to the representation not only would enhance video games, give us this new breath of air in the genre, but also, like, inspire people that they don't have to necessarily play as this bog stock character. They don't have to make this bog stock character. Like, it's a self-defeating prophecy. If this game won't sell because it won't look like that person, no one's making that game because they believe it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and we need it's easy to do though. It's easy. It's actually pretty easy to do represent and do it well.
It's got the simplest solution. It's just no one wants to take that step, I guess.
Like, a lot of people talk about The Walking Dead, and almost the entire developers, from what I've seen, even from that creation, that behind the scenes video, they were all white mostly. Most of them were white, and they did something wasn't really done before. And when I say about the game of the year that won for 2012, the game of the year that won for 2012 was an episodic adventure game where you play as a black man protecting a black girl. That never happens, and it wasn't tokenized whatsoever to the whole like tropes for just the quote unquote the angry black man, or that they can't be caregiver. Like, there's just so many tropes for that, and you actually have characters throughout, such as Clementine and Lee, whom you're playing as. They're written as people in that situation. If a zombie apocalypse happened, white people would not be the only ones caring.
It literally comes down to just treat the characters as people, as opposed to looking at someone who doesn't fit the mold of whatever video games is at this moment and think, we're going to do something special for there. Like, when it comes to a person of color, a woman, a person of a different sexual orientation, doesn't matter. Just treat them like a person first. But no one ever seems to want to take that step, and always seems to think, oh, it's too hard. And it really comes down to just talk to these people. Once you talk to these people, you can get that research. Do your research. Do your homework. It's as simple as that, but no one seems to really want to acknowledge that.
And there are people who will listen and they will share their experiences. And there are women and people of color who will do that, but not many are gonna actually go and actively research and search out. And even with IndiE3 Liberation, and I know a lot of people talk to me about how great of a character Aveline de Grandpere is, but the issue was Vita. It didn't sell well. People talked about, it being glitchy and there's so many glitches, the game break. Nobody talked about Aveline being a great and well-written woman of color, a lead woman of color. And then it's like, it was on the Vita, which didn't have many games at that time. And same with Remember Me. And that was a game everyone was really looking forward to play. And then it came out, and you have a woman of color. But it was talked about the combat wasn't good, the world was interesting, but nobody really talked about Nilin and her being a well-written character, because I've heard people, I haven't played the game yet, but they'll tell me about Remember Me, they tell me how well-written Nilin is as a character.
Like, I always appreciate that they point out, say the objective review. Surprise, this game is a little messy, sure, but you can't address and point out, hey, good job doing something different. I feel like the more people hear good job for doing something different, the more people will do the good job for doing something different, and then we'll eventually find this mythical game that is just beautiful, full of great characters, well written, play well, and it will be like, good, I'm glad all these games exist, as opposed to everyone being scared to make this game.
It's 2014, and we barely get lucky to get even one woman of color, one woman lead solo protagonist. Look at, I was talking about this a few days ago, The Order 1886. It's set in alternate London. You play as for white people. What? And what I read is that the one woman who's on the Order is gonna be a love interest. No, that's. And if it's set in alternate history and you're fighting creatures and monsters, you're gonna have white people exist in alternate history London, but you're not gonna have any other characters of color. And Nintendo's doing Codename Steam, and that's set in London in the 1800s too, and that has characters of color. There's a Hispanic woman, from what I see, called the Fox, and there's a black man, from what I see at the moment. There's not much information for Codename Steam from Nintendo, but it's set in the same time period. It has characters of color in a game like The Order doesn't.
I'm sick to death as well of people saying the stock response. Well, I mean, we're trying to be historically accurate. It's like, come on. You're saying people of color didn't exist in the 1800s. The go-to state, we weren't invented yet, because no one ever seems to want to be the one who's like, well, let's make this photorealistic 1800 game, and just happen to put a person of color in there. It's my video game. Who needs historically accurate? I'm just saying, if I'm making a game where I'm shooting werewolves in 18th century, 1800s England with steampunk weapons and stuff, I might put a brown person in there and just be like, don't tell nobody. Don't tell the historians.
I'm gonna note that you have about 5 minutes left or so. But I mean, we don't have any panels left after, so you can go a little bit over. But I want to note that if you have any concluding thoughts, anything you really want to get explained, you should probably say that just now. Also, if people have any questions in the chat as well, you should probably say those things very soon. So
yes,
if anyone has questions about anything they want to talk about, and then you can note it.
I can see the chat. I can answer any questions.
Yep.
As for closing thoughts, once again, as we can tell by the way I've been talking so far, I didn't really have a formal setup for this, but just in general, video games are evolving. They're an evolving concept. They can be whatever we want them to be. We can do whatever stories we want. It's literally a medium that you can get more contact with people than, say, film or books, because it's interactive. And with this, we can teach people. We can, if you're going to make a game about racism, we can actually tell them, hey, this is what it was like to be that kind of person of color during those times. You can see how they're experiencing this today. But in general, we're still stuck with boring white men with guns who are in power. And every time the diversity happens, Walking Dead notwithstanding, it's just kind of shoved to the side. And it's so sad.
And also, please, no more white savior roles. Like, having a white man have to intervene, and how people of color aren't in themselves and they have to be saved all the time it's racist in the sense where... Go on?
No, go ahead.
And it's in the sense where people of color aren't independent of themselves and they have to be saved by this white man, which happens a lot. With Far Cry 3 was a perfect example of that, in the fetishization of indigenous people, and it's a lot of literature does that, but for some of the video games we need to always call that out. We need to call out the issues for these games, and we need to tell these developers, need to send them emails, tweet them, say something to them so they can at least see this and see that it's an issue. I saw the new Harvest Moon is going to allow same-sex marriage. Like, that's amazing and incredible, and they listened from last time. Like, this is going to be, I read a bit of the press release, I only got a bit of time, but it said this is going to be the first Harvest Moon with same-sex marriage, and that's wonderful and amazing, and they listen to gamers, and they listen to people. And we need to call this stuff out, like The Order having 4 white people in alternate London in
Lana
the
just...
18...
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, if she has a question.
Oh, Lana just asked, do you find video games are behind representation compared to the rest of film and TV? And it's like, I think film and TV still have work to do, but at the same time, they don't have, the loud gatekeepers that video games seem to have. Like, there's definitely people in media with film and movies and TV, and it's like, they're there, and they're saying, well, you can't do this, that's not right, you can't have Black Hobbit, but at the same time, they're still pushing these kind of things forward, where in video games, they're stalled because it comes down to, we're a AAA big-budget game, we gotta make our money back, we have to make sure this game, starring a guy, sad white guy with pretty blue eyes and a big gun, will sell. And it's like, take risk, maybe change a bit. If you take the risk, maybe you'll attract the people, maybe the games will change, but no one wants to really move forward. Like, I was thrilled when Pokemon let me change my skin to look like me. I was glad that I could look like myself playing Pokemon. If Pokemon can do it, if Pokemon can do it, like, come on, what's the risk? Like, if you're big name game star white sad man with gun can't do what Pokemon can do, I'm just saying, maybe we should hang it up. That's just me. Sorry, that's not an official statement. That is not endorsed by IndiE3, but I'm just holding everyone's standard to Pokemon at this point.
Like, I played Pokemon since I was 6 years old, and Pokemon didn't allow me to change my skin color. It was like, you're a kid with a hat on, and that obviously doesn't look like anything I do. And having Pokemon let you change your skin color now is unbelievably huge. To do something, it's so minimal, but it's something so huge for people who want to exist in this world, who can and are able to exist in this world. And for other mediums, comics are doing really well now. Marvel is doing really well with. There's about 6 solo women leading their own comics, and you have a Muslim girl leading her own comic, which is amazing on so many levels, because it's Ms. Marvel, starring Kamala Khan, who's a Muslim teenager who lives in New Jersey. She is the book is gorgeous, and the writing is spot on, and she's written as a real person and as an actual person, and it's selling out each issue. There's only been 4 issues, and it sells out completely on each one. And again, this is going to be one of the most important comic books for quite a long time, and in the last maybe 10 to 20 years, because Marvel is actively having a Muslim teenage girl, 16 years old, lead her own comic, and it's selling out every issue. Every issue sells out in a few hours, and they have to order more and do second, third. There's a 4th printing now for just issue 1. This is what happens when we actually try to take that risk in this age. We get a great character, an amazing character like Kamala Khan, and it sells out every issue. It's well written. She's written as a real person.
That's really all it takes.
Yeah.
Treat these people of color, these mysterious people of color that no one really wants to touch. Teach them like people. That's it. Write them like people.
That's about it. Just research, talk to people. People will definitely. There are people out there, people of color and women, who will share their experiences, and we'll get better. We need to have better representation, because representation matters so much. To see yourself on the screen, to see a character that looks like you, to see a character that has the same sexuality as you. It matters so much on so many levels.
If I saw a person of color that in the medium years ago, I probably would have been way more eager to try to make video games way back when. Let's put it that way.
For sure. I myself never had any sort of representation growing up whatsoever for media, from television to film. Though I consumed more than maybe 40 to 60 hours of media every week, I didn't have one character whatsoever. That's all I needed. I just needed one well-written or even a C character to be on the screen somewhere, and I never had that whatsoever. And if that didn't happen, then I'm gonna take my own steps to, like, at the moment I'm writing a how to write C characters piece, because nobody else is gonna do that. Nobody else is gonna understand how to do that, because representation matters. And it's not just like, oh, you see yourself on the screen, but not having representation, you can have self-loathing and internalized racism. You can feel that you as yourself as exist, that you're always going to be a sidekick, or you're invisible. And it's so simple, actually, so easy and simple to do representation well. And we need to go out of the cisgender heterosexual white man. That's a trope already. That's been a trope for far too long. Why don't we make, like, why not have a game with a cast of characters, such as The Walking Dead. And The Walking Dead sells well too because it's well written. There's no issue there. Just great games, but have that representation because it fucking matters.
Geez, I think it's a pretty good thing to conclude it because we're a little bit past 6.
Okay.
But yeah, that's pretty alright. I mean, geez, thank you all for coming. Seriously, we really appreciate it.
No
Really
problem. Thanks
appreciate
for
you all
putting up
sitting
with my
here
voice.
talking. Yeah, that's totally cool. Geez, I mean, so for now at least. Oh yes, and thank you all for watching, of course. I just want to note that for now, what's going on is that we have no panels until 8 o'clock EST, and then we have 2 panels on intersection criticism development, and then we have the Indie Game Riot podcast. Again, thank you all for speaking with us. Thank you for watching. You're watching IndiE3 2014, and we're going to be back soon. Take care.